Alrighty, what is up everybody? It is your boy Farai. Thank you once again for tuning into another video. Yeat season is among us. So today we're going to be looking at how to mix your vocals over some Yeat style beats, some rage style beats. I think that once this album drops, we're going to have a whole season of Yeat style productions. I think he's going to be featuring with a whole lot of different artists. We've seen a whole bunch of snippets, Uzi, possibly Drake, who knows, right? It's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, I wanted to kind of give you a template that would, excuse me, allow you to really get those kind of hard and aggressive vocals that are going to be able to survive how much is going on in these beats, right? Because with these rage beats, you've got these synths, you've got the aggressive 808s, you've got the aggressive hi-hat. So, you know, there are techniques to actually allow you to really have that vocal sit on top of all of that and still sound good, still blend into the mix. But yeah, a bit of background before we get into it. I can see the track that we're remixing today is probably going to be part of this album, as you can see. But it is the first song that I've seen that has a full production credit list, so it's obviously going to be a label album. So we can see the mastering engineer here. I know Joe. I've watched a lot of his Mix with the Master series, right? He does a lot of mastering, and you know, you can see Yeat is mixing, so that's pretty cool, right? He's mixing his own stuff. But you can see the label probably, you know, wanted him to get some kind of industry standard mastering, right? So, you know, I've worked that into the template. But yeah, you know, Joe's pretty cool. Funny enough, Sterling Sound actually uses the same desks that we use in the studio, so coincidence, pretty cool, right? But yeah, let's get straight into it. So I'll play the remix I have. Again, I'm not trying to mimic Yeat's vocal style. I'm also trying to blend into his production, so it's as if it's a featuring track, right? Essentially, that's what we want to do. But let's get into it, and we'll break down the vocal chain. Let's get it.
I ain't tryna hear your music, turn it up, that's it, some trash.
Yeah, we ballin' like every season, yeah, from winter to summer. I hop out the whip, the AMG, they call it a Tonka. Fuck your style, fuck your world, fuck your girl. Keep it 100, I'm from a whole different world. Yeah, pull up with my red bone. If it ain't about an M, then leave me alone. Rockstar shit, still rock V-Long. Came up out the gutter, but you know that these
Niggas came mean, I was still in the Tonka.
Alright, so lots of fun, but yeah, you know, you can hear the sound, right? It's got an aggressive vocal, and you know, you want that treble to shine, but you don't want the mid, you don't want to take out too much of the mid. That's something that I started off the mix with. I was kind of pulling out a lot. I kind of eased up on that because you start to lose a lot of that kind of body, you know. But yeah, I'll show you how to stack compression so we can get that sound. But yeah, man, obviously first things first, you want to do your auto-tune. You know, not that much. Obviously, you don't want it to tweak too crazy. Tune it to how you like. This is how I like to set up my auto-tune. A lot of people ask me what auto-tune I'm using, specifically 8.1. If you are an Antares auto-tune owner and you own the pro version, you can actually go to legacy downloads and find all of the different versions. This is what we use in the studio. Pretty cool. Simple NoiseGate. Since we're doing quite a bit of treble boosting, we don't want any of that to kind of pass through into our mix. So that's what we're really doing on the back end per se, right? Once we head over to our main vocal chain, I like to start these mixes off these days with quite a bit of saturation. So the first thing I do, if you're an FL Studio user, you can check this out, link in the description. This is a plugin that we made, and yeah, pretty much it just allows us to get that additional kind of crispiness added to our vocal sound, right? This is something I kind of add towards the end of the mix. It's just going to allow me to get that extra 10% out of my track. So if you want to hear how that sounds without it, right, I'll just kind of bypass it real quick.
yeah, pull up with my red bone. If it ain't about an M, then leave me alone. Rockstar shit, still rock V-Long.
You can kind of hear, you know, the vocal cuts to the mix a lot more. We're doing a nice little air treble boost. This has all been set up for you, reducing that bass a little bit, and really just kind of setting our vocal up to be mixed. Also adding in, most importantly, this tube drive to get that aggression. Now, if you don't own Vocal Enhancer, again, you can use a free plugin like Bus Color 4, and it has a whole bunch of different flavors on it. I would probably, for this style of music, stick to the true vocal sound, maybe the dark if you already have quite a bright sounding mic. You know, you don't want to brighten it up even more, right? So you may want to ease off that treble, but that works pretty well. And you can actually stack them on top of each other, because right after the vocal enhancer, I actually wanted a little bit of that kind of Neve sound. Whenever I think of bright and upfront mixes, a lot of the kind of vintage rock was recorded on Neves, and that was always quite bright. So you can see how I'm using a bit of the history of audio and the different gear out there to kind of, you know, create that sound before we really get going with the EQ. So if I actually disable this, you can really hear the difference, right? If you disable both of these.
Yeah, pull up with my red bone. If it ain't about an M, then leave me alone.
So you see how important that is? It's just kind of adding, you know, the Neve is adding a little bit of that kind of mid grittiness, right? But this is most importantly adding that kind of you know, kind of just that little tilt EQ going on, just to get that air kind of popping. And from there on out, you know, we do our standard EQ. This EQ, again, when I'm recording any artist or I'm recording myself, I'm going to be kind of just fine-tuning the SSL EQ. This is something, again, that we learn in the studio. You know, while recording, we kind of just, you know, tweaking these EQs a little bit just to kind of get that sound already going, so that we can kind of work from that, right? And then we can kind of work around that. So, you know, a little bit of EQ. Again, I'm always working around this 200 zone. It kind of works for my voice, just really taming that 200, and then just boosting a little bit of that treble, nothing crazy. But yeah, you know, high pass filter at 80 Hertz. You don't want to suck too much out, right? Again, if you suck too much out of these vocals, you end up with a really thin sounding vocal. You want your vocals to be bright and up front, but not thin, okay?
Yeah, pull up on my red bone. If it ain't about an AM, then leave me alone.
Right, it kind of just sits there and it sounds good. So you want to tweak your EQ up until that point. Funny enough, as well in this mix, since I'm boosting the treble and we have a lot going on with the hi-hats, you know, we're kind of cutting away everything above 14,000 Hertz. We're essentially doing a low pass filter. But with the SSL, it's quite natural sounding, so it's nothing crazy. It's a very kind of sleek EQ. It doesn't really make it sound too different, but at the end of the mix, it kind of does add up. So, you know, that's what we're doing with SSL EQ. After that, we kind of get going into our compression section. We start off by doing just a little bit of de-essing. Again, since we're boosting the treble later on in the mix, we want to make sure that it is tamed so that things sound decent. So here you go.
Yeah, pull up on my red bone. If it ain't about an AM, then leave me. Yeah, pull up on my.
So you can see it's just doing a little bit of de-essing. At some points, it does get quite aggressive, you know.
Yeah, we ballin' like every season, yeah, from winter to summer.
So you can hear season and summer really get sucked away. So you want your de-esser to be set up to deal with what it needs to deal with, but not to kind of become excessive, right? Otherwise it starts really dulling the vocal and taking away from what we want, essentially. Alright, so after that, what we're doing is a little bit of 1176 compression. Now, for those who know about the 1176, especially the different versions, each one has a slightly different character. Now, what the silver face one, what we call, or the blue stripe, whatever you want to call it, has is it has a bit more of a trebly sound. So you can see how now I'm using a trebly style of compressor to further enhance our sound, right? So, you know, this is just doing a little bit of compression. Again, depending on how kind of volatile your vocal projections are, you're going to be compressing more, right? You really just want to glue your vocal together. So you can see here I'm doing about 3 dB of compression. Let's just see how much we're doing right here.
Summer, I hop out the whip, the AMG, they call it a Tonka.
So you can see right there, just a little bit, but on certain parts it will get more aggressive.
Yeah, pull up on my red bone. If it ain't about an AM, then leave me alone.
So that really helps to solidify the vocal, kind of put it in place. If we turn this off,
yeah, pull up on.
You can see how those yes and things like that really start popping out of the mix. You don't really want that in these types of songs because, again, things start to kind of sound quite messy. So, you know, a little bit of compression, fairly slow release so that it's not too crazy. If you do want to actually stack them up, you can actually have one with a slower release and then one with a faster release, and then you're going to get kind of a distorted sound. But mess around and see what you like. After that, little bit of EQ, parametric EQ. You can use any EQ. This one I just like because it's visually appealing, you know, to show off in tutorials. And really all I'm doing, again, you know, is like a little bit of EQ, right? I'm doing, you know, pretty much dB increments of EQ. I really want, especially in this style of music, I really want to kind of keep the vocal sounding as natural as possible. That's where you can see I'm not doing any kind of crazy dips or cuts. We want to keep the phase of the vocal kind of sounding good. So there you go, nothing crazy over here besides obviously this vocal EQ, 9 dB at 15K. And you know, again, this is not always going to be needed, but for this particular mic that I use, I want to boost that treble. But again, you can use how much you like, right? So yeah, there you go. So a trick that I learned a while back from an engineer was to compress, EQ, compress. This is something that I like to do when I kind of do an excessive boost with the EQ, like we did here, right? Because I don't want that air to just be kind of in your face. I want to kind of tuck it down a little bit. And for this track, for this type of mix that I'm doing, for this trebly vocal sound we're going for, I wanted to use something that was kind of going to give our vocal a bit of body, but also give it a bit of brightness, right? So using this Fairchild from UAD. And it's doing about probably a dB at max, right?
Yeah, pull up on my red bone. If it ain't about an AM, then leave me alone. Rockstar shit, still rock be long.
So you can see how really it's just acting as a limiter in a way, right? We don't have a ratio button on this, and so all we can really do is set our initial input gain and then set our time constant, which kind of sets a automatic attack and release. And it's just doing a little bit of a kind of limiting type thing. So, you know, all together with the different compressors, right?
Yeah, pull up on my red bone.
You can see how it's way too aggressive, way too over the top, right? But once we kind of gain stage our compressors in, we really get that solidified sound. Test out different compressors again. You can use stock compressors, but the theory stays the same. I did do recently a video showing how to get this type of compression effect using stock plugins, so you can check that out. But yeah, there you go, man. At the end of the vocal chain, or towards the end of the vocal chain, I kind of wanted to add something that would deal with the bass a bit more. I still felt that the bass was kind of jumping out, and so I added this multiband compressor just to really deal with this section, and then also just to deal with the top end a little bit. I still felt it was a bit spiffy, right? And so I've kind of added this in right here, nothing crazy.
Yeah, pull up on my red bone. If it ain't about the end, then leave me alone. Rockstar shit, still I belong.
So as you can see right there, it's really just aggressively doing things, and I've kept the release times pretty slowish, but the faster you go, the more it distorts. So if you want a bit more of a distorted sound, you can try that as well. 26 I guess this is milliseconds. It's still pretty fast, so you know, you got that going for you. Again, just a bit of Seth Falcon's flanger, right? Just 4% flanger. It's just something I have by default on every mix. And yeah, that sounds good, man. You know, ad-libs again, there's nothing crazy going on. You know, really, you just want to make sure that your you know, your ad-libs have a bit of delay on them, right? So, you know, it's nothing crazy, right? I mean, I've just got kind of my standard template, but I'm not really using any plugins other than a bit of reverb, bit of EQ, and then a bit of flanger right there, or kind of, you know.
Yeah.
You know, these are just kind of stock standard background effects, right? We got a bit of a background left and right. This is not needed.
If it ain't about the end, then leave me alone.
Absolutely no plugins going on. Just a bit of a high pass filter. These are not on, so you know, nothing crazy, right? But yeah, you know, just a standard delay. I'm just trying to find one of these ones that have the delay on it. There you go. There you go. And again, it's just a little bit of a Echo Boy Jr. You can use any delay you want. I like this one because it has a saturation effect on it, so if you want to get more of a kind of distorted sound, you can do that. But it's very subtle, right? So you know, 8th note delay is the secret for rage style beats because they're quite fast. You don't want to have a long delay. It's more kind of euphoric. Obviously this is a lot more aggressive. So 8th note delays, even on the delay send, we've got a 16th note actually, and that's the one that we hear throughout the track. For example here, right? So really, you know, the secret reverb comes in how much you send to the reverb, right? I can have the same reverb forever and just send a little bit more or a little bit less to kind of create that effective space. You know, we've got a bit of flanger going on here with our outboard effects, right? H3000, you can check out Farai's Ultra Harmonizer, right? That's a plugin we made to emulate what we have in the back here. And then just a little bit of a Yamaha going on. And this one's a little bit different. Yeah, I actually got rid of all of the top end and then just kind of, you know, enhanced that bass just to kind of make the vocal bass sound a bit wider. But again, those are just extra add-ons that are not really needed. But if I was mixing a track like this, this is what I would do. So yeah, man, hopefully you like the sound of this. Hopefully you are hopping on these beats. It's going to be a really fun season of new music dropping, and I think this is definitely going to be part of that sound. So definitely check the FLP in the description if you want to learn more about my process on how I record and mix in FL Studio. Check out the vocal recording course and vocal mixing course for FL Studio, and I'll check you out in the next one. Peace out.